So why? Oh, tell me I didn't leave my phone in the car. Damn it. Excuse me. Pretty sure I left my phone in the car. Come on. Anyway, Mr. Knitting Cult Lady had a crash on his scooter today, but he would drive himself to the hospital because pilots. And I'm pretty sure I left my phone in the car. So, all right. So instead of being at the hospital, I'm going to sign 200 books and a corset. I'm doing corsets this year. Fortunately, we can still keep in touch with the phone or with the tablet, but he's pretty sure he has a concussion. He may have broken his wrist because scooters. This is a cool name. Rhea, like the Greek goddess. So she's gonna get an emboss. Okay. So many of you have been patiently waiting for these books. So they're mostly coming. Mostly shipping out this weekend. And today we'll get through as many as we can. And we have to finish the musical pitch. Probably get to the cult situation report this week. We'll see. I feel like Elon's got to be on the chopping block, though. Like, strike one was the fact that on Felon 47's Day of Empire, the biggest thing talked about was Elon's salute. And now with his kid in his office telling him to shut his mouth and he's not the president. So he's going to be like cult leaders don't forgive this stuff. They just wait for their time to strike. So that's going to for sure happen. Left my phone in the car. Yeah, he called me this morning and he was like, I need you to come pick me up so I can take myself to the hospital. I was like, oh no. I've had a bad scooter crash. He at least was wearing a helmet because he's smart. But yeah, so then he gets off his scooter crash. He goes to school bleeding, takes a quiz, and then calls me to come pick him up so that he can go to the hospital. And he was like, it was getting kind of hard to think. He's like, I gave myself a concussion test, but pilots can't do anything about pilots. What was Elon's cover of Time magazine? What people keep saying this, but I don't know what happened. Was he on the cover? I'm over the daily offensive gaslighting. So we are also trying to figure out, now that hopefully the book will be back in print, is it the signed books that people like so much on TikTok? Or is it just because it's easy to get the book? That's what my publisher of my next book is trying to figure out. Because they're trying to help me with logistics in some way. It's the signed. Yeah, that's what I think. So they may have to go to signed but not personalized, so that like an actual shipping company book company can help me. But you know, I finally have my answer for people who want to be like, both sides are just as culty. Like, look, by definition, a two-party system, black and white, define yourself by being against someone else. Like, by definition, that's culty. But I wasn't selling 50 to 100 to 200 cult books a day when the Democrats were in office. So there's that. Well, I have a stamp that says, what cults are you in? Knitting Cult Lady. And so that's what I stamped it. And then I just hit and sign. I mean, it doesn't take that long. But anyway, they just dumped these books on my door, literally dumped, and this box fell open and it had snowed, so it was all wet. And like a bunch of them are destroyed. Fortunately, it's Amazon, so I can return them. But like, we don't have enough of this book to be destroying 20 copies, folks. So, what was I saying about? We're talking a little bit about prepping today and how like preppers are kind of culty because it's like very individualistic. Like, it makes sense to be prepared for individual disasters that could happen and like a minimum of things. And it makes sense to be going through your skills in your head, your sort of, in the military, we call battle drills. Like, what would I do if? Really good idea to know different skills that your neighborhood and your community has. But like, you're not going to survive an apocalypse event on your own. Like, these people that are storing up 3 months of food and water, are you storing up tons of ammo and prepared to unalive your neighbors for these resources? Because like, yeah, are you from Utah? State-run religion being preppers? Never known a prepper who had to plan to deal with their own human waste. Exactly. Nobody thinks about like the real stuff. This is like, so I have a friend of mine who's the research assistant for Culting of America. She is like Catholic, single family, homeschool cult of like prepper people. And she's like, people don't know what it's like to score your own road and like dig your own outhouses and like really, really survive. That's what I say. And I keep saying, like, I need to just start this in my neighborhood, but I keep being like, instead of having just like a normal happy hour, because like, y'all, neurotypicals are so boring. Like, we just get together once a month and one person's up and they're just going to talk for 30 minutes about something they're good at. And like, at the very least, you'll have an interesting night and you'll learn some new things about your neighbor and like have drinks together. And like, you never know when a skill is going to be useful. I figured out something from studying the Kendrick Drake beef that I can now use to explain the cult of Hollywood. That's so awesome. Like, you never know when things are going to be useful. But yeah, this is the same, like, I was talking about like AI and privacy, and like we have given it away, right? Like we've given privacy away. It doesn't exist anymore. And people are like, oh yeah, this is why I turn off my this on my iPhone. And it's like, no, it's cute that you think you're like little individual things are going to keep you free from the surveillance state. It is cute. We said Utah, very Mormon and conservative. Yeah. You can ask me a question. Yeah, I have like half the books. So I'm down to like only having 400 orders outstanding, and I am getting them. And I'm so sorry about the ones that were Valentine's Day gifts. I feel so bad. Oh, I'm just fancy because it's Fancy Friday. The day that I got my book deal was like, I think I've been working for about 5 years to try to like divorce my money from my time and get to do my artist thing. And the day I got my book deal was like kind of the last piece. And so it was like my freedom, right? And my first thought, I was like, if I'm going to go down as an author, I'm going to wear whatever I want for the rest of my life. And shortly thereafter, I decided that I had no reason to ever dress boring, so I never do. Yeah, it is just about power, right? Someone says, I wish one of them, Elon or Trump, would admit that it's just about power. And it's like, this is the cult leader thing, is like to play power games, right? Like they don't need more money. They just want to like play games and win. And like Trump just knows he just has a few years left. Like Elon just chose to be a full-on supervillain. I'm just... Right? Thank you. I got AOC knitting. I'm like, she's going to get famous for knitting first. I'm going to be so... But no, I love it. And I love how the right is just like giving us fiber arts now. Because their whole, stereotype is the liberal arts holding blue-haired basket weaving, underwater basket weaving. This is why I say I'm their worst fear, because I'm a literal basket weaving, blue-haired, having liberal arts holding woman with military experience and a Harvard master's degree. And an award from the president that they don't have. I don't understand. I'm somehow getting order for books, even though my product is at 0, but like somebody's figuring out how to do this. Oh, it's okay. We're going to turn it on soon. But I think what we're going to do so that we stop running out is we're going to order our own print of books. And then I'm going to sign a bunch of pages, basically. And then they'll actually print out in the book. So it's still hand signed. And then the fulfillment center can fulfill them. And I don't have to be a book publishing house. Yeah, I just don't know how and other creators are pitching it. And so I'm only getting like 1 or 2 a day, not 150, but anyway, I'm going to be caught up by next week. So we hope, building a brand. I met my virtual assistant Megan yesterday. So she is lovely. I think she is a little bit overwhelmed. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm cool. You'll get time to figure it out. And I was also like, and I say this to everyone that works with me, I'm like, I am like an entrepreneur. So either like you're getting like a percentage, or like when you help me build projects and processes that then make me money, pitch me a bonus. I will probably give it to you. This is my entire organizational psychology. It's like, if you want people to be motivated to do good work, give them money. This is another thing I learned from the Drake-Kendrick thing, is like, you don't have to create everything by yourself, right? Like, it's perfectly acceptable to create art in a team. I had 2 other women help me write Uncultured, and that's why it's so good. Drake's working with other people, like, cool. But like, I'm not going to go to a writer conference and start dropping bars about what a good writer I am, because I didn't do it by myself. And some of them have. They come talk about me for using help, and I don't care. Did they sell Jeff Bezos out of books? They did not. What this just means, what I've learned, is that the publishing industry is in no way set up for you to have a random book spike. They're just only set up for you to go viral when you come out. So I'm learning a lot of things. When I got my book deal, in addition to being like, I'm going to dress however I want, I was like, oh, I'm a lieutenant. This is my lieutenant deployment. Like, I'm going to be drinking from a fire hose and learning things. Like, I did not realize when someone offers you more money than you've ever seen in your life and says, can you give me a really good book in 6 months? I didn't realize I had the option to say, no, I need a year. And I gave it to them in 5. Because Army officer. We're ahead of schedule on Culting of America, so I'm still hoping we can get it out this year. I'm actually working super fast on that, thanks to a random book shutdown. It was needed. 'Twas needed. I'm becoming quite proud of it. And I made enough money selling Uncultured to pay the writer who's also editing Culting of America, who also helped me with Uncultured, but who helped me with Un-American, but then didn't get paid because it didn't get optioned. But I'm going to make money with it. And so I paid her, and I feel so good about it. One of my strict things now is I don't accept free labor. I didn't think I was then either. We just thought for sure that one was going to sell too. And then this afternoon, me and Lizzie's my true pain. We're going to finish the musical pitch. 2 separate documents, kind of like an overview and then kind of like an investor document. And then on Monday, we're going to talk to a person, a potential partner, as they say. Uncultured is about growing up in one of the world's most extremely recognized cults, the Children of God, and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. And then the first time I was watching a cult leader run America, I was like, it's funny because I think I had like a trauma response to him getting elected. Like I predicted it was going to happen in 2016 and then it did. And then I was just like super triggered and I stopped watching TV and all of this stuff. And what I did was go into a hole, write a book, get a master's degree and build a platform. And now I have stuff to say. So anyway, I'm comparing the cult that I grew up in to the, it is also available now on the Spotify subscription. So if you are a Spotify subscriber, you can just listen to it anytime you like. And I still get paid. Royalties are fun. Right now, I'm just paying back that advance that we mentioned. Yeah, not accepting free labor, and especially because some of the stuff that I do can be mission-based. And this is one of my answers, by the way. I just think like if you're going to be in a leader position, you just have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Sorry. And it's like my musical, everyone's inspired about it. And I'm just like, I'm going to drown in free music labor offers from the Mormons. Super, super amazing. And like, I want it to be this mission thing. And I want all the actors to be cult babies and to be bought in. But like everyone's going to get paid. Like, my entrepreneurial skill is to build the boat, row the boat as we're building it. So like, as we get money for it, then we'll pay for production, then we'll raise more money. And like, so, I did write Uncultured with a woman who bought in to the idea. And I love her dearly for that. And, Brandy Larson, I mean, it paid off for her, but like, it's really hard to get people to write with you for free because usually that's not going to sell, and not going to pay off for them. So that was pretty amazing, but yeah, it just sort of evolved my thing there. But the good news is I'm good at selling and I like it. So I can create art and then sell it and then use that art to pay for the creation of the other art. And that's what we're doing now, using sales of Uncultured to fund Culting of America. We're also doing a fundraiser for Culting of America. If you want to contribute to that, it's linked in the bio. Kendrick destroyed the personal life reputation. Yeah. He seems like a good example of like, I used to tell my soldiers this, like, you don't get in trouble for being wrong. You get in trouble for being stupid. Or like, I did this video where I was like responding and squashing a little mansplaining bro who like had called my hair blue. And I was like, sir, it's purple. And people were like, well, he could be colorblind. Well, then he should be smart enough not to use colored insults. What gives? I can't math or science because I was homeschooled in a cult, so I don't use science-y insults. And I've decided, so one of y'all told me that we don't say sacred cow anymore, which is perfectly understandable because millions of people do think that cows are sacred or do hold cows sacred. But I was like, darn, because first of all, what are we going to say for that phrase? And second of all, like I had just come up with hashtag sacred cow tipping. So I decided we're going to call it the sacred moose. I don't think anyone holds moose sacred. Like valuable in indigenous cultures, yes, but not sacred, right? Someone will let me know. Then we could have sacred moose tipping and everyone would get it. arguing with colorblind men about the color of something. Sir, you cannot see color. Sit down. Apparently, people want me to have a whole line of sit down merch now, too. One thing I'm going to have my assistant help me do is build Knitting Cult Lady's closet. And then I'm just going to have all these pieces of things that I have made. And then if people want them, they can get them. I find that like when I'm paid to do something, I don't want to do it anymore sometimes with creative stuff. Golden Idol. Yeah, Golden Idol tipping wasn't quite as funny. But it's like I use this term specifically for AA in my work. Like, why? Why is AA the sacred moose? Right? Like, why is that the untouchable thing for some reason? Like, it's so dumb. But I'm just like, I get if we're phasing out an expression, like we need to be doing that. We need to be talking about words. Someone the other day on my thread said something. I was like, this is just a language battle. And I'm like, yes, I am an author and a thinker, philosopher, in fact, according to my master's degree. Like, this is what we do. We talk about words in depth. Like, I've never heard an expert in any field be like, oh, this is just language battle. Like, no, that's what we do in expertise. We endlessly debate the meaning of certain words. It's fun to be like, I'm gonna be a scholar and an expert, but I'm gonna do it on my own and make enough money so I don't have to ask anyone's permission to show up and be an expert. People don't like it when you don't jump through their hoops. Somebody did ask me on a podcast, like if I thought I was different or had a different perspective than other cult experts. And I was like, okay, here we go. Like, and you know, my response was just like, I'm the next generation of cult experts. And like, this is how it's, damn it. You know, this is how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to build on what they gave us. Most of your cult experts till now have been folks who joined cults or folks who just randomly, like Robert Lifton, who studied returned prisoners of war, you know, and studied brainwashing or totalitarian states, you know, like this kind of stuff. And now we are getting the cult babies growing up and going into the psychology and going into the cult field. And as far as I know, I'm the only one with military experience that's like also honed their expertise in this area and is doing this. So not somehow unique or special or better, just, you know, even if they've been studying this language for 40 years, coercive control, I've been doing it since birth. This is me at the age of 2, performing as a soldier of love in God's army, being trafficked through Japan. Like at the age of 2, I had to know how to get along with my manager. This is actually one thing I think Uncultured like adds to the cult literature, is that like cult kids can teach you about more than just surviving trauma. We can teach you about group behavior in a way perhaps you've never thought about, but have certainly experienced. And such, of course, was my goal. Serious, like words I can't say on this one. Discussion going on here. Happy Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Yeah. I did not see Hug's breath drinking whiskey during a press conference, but I love that for him. Oy, oy, oy. Everyone's like freaking out too much and not freaking out enough at the same time. It's so interesting. Yeah, you are lucky you never became a Moonie. I'm surprised you could have a best friend that was a Moonie if you were not. Also, when I sold my cult book, I bought my husband an airplane, and that airplane was called a Moonie. But we don't have airplanes anymore because it's not really a thing one should be doing necessarily in today's world. I do have other books I suggest to read. So first of all, I run a book club, which is very cool. And we do memoirs. We meet twice a month. It's kind of like 2 book clubs at once or something. Like one is we're reading memoirs and one is we're reading cult theory books. We just did Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom DIED'd. And that one's very good. She's, of course, an actress. She does her own audio, so I recommend it via audio. I love, speaking of audiobooks, Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. If I could have dinner with any celebrity alive, it would be Trevor Noah, because the stuff he says about language has influenced me so much, and he's amazing. But also, he thinks he can pick a chicken cleaner than anyone, and I would like to take that challenge. So, not pick a chicken, even like eat the carcass. Yeah. Let's do it. So like you have to listen to Born a Crime because he does all the different voices and stuff. So brilliant. I really, really love Isabel Wilkerson's Cast, which is looking at the like American single drop theory racism, the racism that was too racist for Mustache Man, looking at Yahtzee Germany and looking at India caste system and comparing them all together. And it's like a mind-breaking book, as is Sapiens by Noah Yuval Harari. That's one of my faves. I really also like Invisible Women by Carolyn Criado Perez. One of the things I'm going to have Megan, my assistant, do is make book lists and have them all hyperlinked to bookshop.org so that people can just like go to my website and download a bunch. Yeah, I can't believe I can believe they confirmed him. I've expected them to confirm everyone, and they have. But Tulsi Gabbard and Hog's Breath are like actively in cults. Like, this is just my people running the government. And then you have Elon, who's in many cults, but he's trying to cult of entrepreneurship, move fast and break things with the US government. And, it's going to be so fun for all of us to live through. Yeah, Invisible Women is insane. And I always warn people, I'm like, it'll make you mad at your kitchen for like 2 weeks for being sexist. And I don't know why you're here telling me I'm concerned about the wrong things, Landon, or why you think you get a right to dictate what I do with my platform, but I'm sorry, I don't work for you. What are you doing every single day to fight back? Oh, I have not read Braiding Sweetgrass. I do know it's like the unicorn indie book that goes all mainstream. She's so rich. Right now I'm still reading Ketanji Brown Jackson's memoir. I'm reading, what else? Conspirituality. I'm rereading all of Timothy Snyder's stuff on tyranny. And etc. And I'm recording, rereading bits of Un-American, my video book, and putting it on the clock app. I don't know what's happening, Landon, but I think I'm just like blocking you. It's funny when people show up and think they can dictate to me. It's cute. So much fun whenever people are like, "You're not doing enough." It's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" No, you have a platform. Yeah, this thing that I built and I made. You know, I'm not actually Superwoman. You too can build a platform and do something. Do I ever speak one-on-one with people from lives? I mean, I have a monthly Stitch and Dish that is through my Patreon that people can show up and talk, not necessarily one-on-one, but show up and talk. You scored in the negative on charisma points. One of the things I'm taking on in the charismatic leadership chapter, I'm like, scholars say it's impossible to perform charisma, but I disagree. I think when you've been raised at the feet of cult leaders, you know how to perform charisma. And that's one thing that he who shall not be named said. And then I was like, where do you think cult leaders learn it? And he goes, oh, I think all cult leaders grew up in cults. Like Elizabeth Holmes' Theranos, parents, mom, crazy bonkers socialite lady, dad, vice president at Enron. Enron, that company which had integrity carved in marble out in front of their Houston headquarters. That's in the book. Like all the organizational psychology, you know, it's all this, like, so much of it, not all, but so much of it is just like lip service to like, yes, culture, amazing, values, yay. But like, whenever I actually pin people down and I'm like, your values are not what you say they are the reporting you require. Show me your values. You can't say you value work-life balance, but send out work on a Friday afternoon that needs to be done on a Monday. You can't say you value your soldiers' safety, but then ask, are you sure you want to destroy the soldier's career? You can't say, Microsoft, that security and safety of your people is your number one priority, but then when the general manager walks in, what he asks is about shrink numbers, theft numbers. Then they don't like that. And like, Daniela, why you gotta think everything's a back group? Because y'all here using cult tactics. And just calling yourselves the good guys, which is a cult tactic. Also a thing that grown men in military pajamas actually do with a straight face. Sorry, camouflage pajamas. Those are not the right lyrics, Daniela. All right. Why would you ask me about young men in military intelligence specifically? Because, like, I can't tell if you have a point about being a man in military intelligence or if you're just speaking to a woman from military intelligence but stereotyping service members. So, I mean, young people in military intelligence, first of all, soldiers tend to come back from war very, very angry. And in military intelligence, you have to go through a very intense and deliberate period of hardening yourself to all of the reports and everything that you are going to see. Some of that is described in my book, but like I would literally have to like stand behind my intelligence and my analysts and be like, don't think about it, don't picture it, pass the report. Because like, if you start picturing what triple amputee means for a human being, like you're going to break down. So like, you can't do that, right? So then you come back. I remember after both of my deployments, just like standing in a fast food line or something behind Americans and just like the petty, silly things people complain about and just being like so freaking furious. You know, war sucks. There's a reason they bring us in for 7 days when we get back and tell us not to unalive our families. Tell the men not to unalive their families. But they make us all come in for it. We can't ensure that the military does anything. All we can do is hope that the individual humans that have to run the wars are the people with the values that we think and we say they are. Unless we all act at once, then the military can't do anything to us. So these are our two options. But the fact that y'all think a force that just spent 20 years going back and forth to war, supposedly for American freedom and because of a huge terrorist attack on American soil, are just going to turn their weapons on you is like been quite disheartening and eye-opening for me to hear. Like, it's really, really hard to get soldiers to turn their weapons on their countrymen, even in countries with much less history of freedom and civil rights and whatever than we have. I mean, the odds are like, it's like, what's the tipping point going to be? When y'all were screaming last week that Elon locked out the Department of Defense, my first thought was good. That'll get us marching. Like, that'll get all the Americans out on the street saying, what the F? But like, there's going to have to be some tipping point. It's ironic because I wrote a paragraph on or 3 paragraphs on how mass movements work and the psychology of mass movements. But I still can't just like create a tipping point. Like, there has to be a tipping point. Should have been when they overturned Roe v. Wade, but it wasn't. Should have been. Yeah, I blocked Landon from the chat. You don't get to tell me, dictate to me what I do with my time and my platform, because I don't work for him, strangely enough. And I don't put up with these kinds of bros in my life. Okay. Trying so hard to, yeah, I do think like the tipping point will surprise us, but it's also like the way I look at it, it's like, what is the tipping point going to be for white women? Because as soon as we want, like, we can control them. There are protests happening 24/7. Yesterday, Mr. Knitting Cult Lady was down protesting outside the VA headquarters. I mean, there was a whole press conference with multiple senators there protesting in advance for supporting veterans. He went down there to be his happy, shiny veteran self. I posted a video this morning. There's an organization called Vote Vets that you can donate to if you want to do something. Call Congress people. If you live in a liberal area, call Congress people in a conservative area. Trump can't be held accountable for anything, and he doesn't need to worry about getting reelected again, but the rest of them do. There will be some sort of tipping point. But yeah, I think like there's this weird thing with white women on the left where it's like you're freaking out too much and you're also not freaking out, not taking it seriously enough. And it's like, man, all the ladies from cults were like, no, like they want to repeal the 19th Amendment. They will not stop until women are back in the home. White women, of course, having the white babies. And I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, but then also all this acting like the military is about to come marching down your streets and blah, blah, blah. It's like a little intense and unreasonable. And so it's like, what? Yeah, it just got paused to tell me my thing was dying, so I had to set it up. That's why you're kind of tipped a little bit. Yeah, I mean, the whole point of being in the minority is like Congress, the parts of Congress that are protesting don't have the power. They don't have the power to stop them right now. And the right has abdicated. So like we don't have one of the branches of government is not working. Our leaders are trying. AOC is out there and Jasmine Crockett is out there, but like they don't have the power to stop them from pushing everything through because they hold all 3 branches of government. part of the time to freak out was when they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett after blocking Merrick Garland. Like, we should have been out protesting in mass, and we didn't. And this is why, like, complying in advance is part of the road to fascism. And this, like, myth that somehow everyone's been told that we can't go hit the streets because they're going to declare martial law, which is a completely impossible thing to do in all of America. But I also think if we get really, really honest with ourselves and we're like, okay, what are white women afraid of? We are afraid that our children are not going to come home. And that already happens in today's America all the time. But then at the same time, it's like there are women who, you know, our grandmothers who fought for rights are gone. And there's, I think, a lot of millennials don't really get it. Because then they would have to realize that their husbands that are okay with this, that are not freaking out right now, like, don't see them as fully, truly human. But like, when we have that conversation, when white women get mad enough, we control more money in the country than men do. We can also grab them by the man pearls and make them do what we want. We can also stop making more white men. So, like, there's lots of ways to fight back. We also have a whole trained veteran force that knows how to take the most armed country in the world and keep an army out of a good valley. But while writing a fictional book about a resistance in America, I would be tearing up the train line. And I would constantly echo the reminder of Michelle Obama. They go high, you go low. You cannot beat the United States spy network. I promise you. When they go high, you must go low. If the revolution does come, it is going to have to be literally no tech. Knitting is more skillful. I was literally at dinner with some friends last night, and he's talking really intense about, you know, what's going on and how it's affecting his work. And I'm just there knitting. And he looks at me and goes, "Are you recording this?" I could be. How do you rebel with no tech? The way rebels have always rebelled. The way they beat us in Afghanistan. You go knock on your neighbor's door and say, "Hey, here's the plan." I haven't read every World War II spy novel for nothing. Woman's spy novel for nothing. You won't. You won't be able, someone in Florida, to talk to someone in Tennessee. If you do, you will be risking discovery of whatever you are trying to do. That's the answer. like I say, like it's cute when I'm telling people about like how data pinging works and they're like, oh yeah, that's why I opt out of this app. You will not beat the United States intelligence network. I promise you. That is all I can tell you until the revolution actually comes. And that's the kind of thing when I'm like, that's the kind of prepping you need to do. What are your modes of communication going to be? If you assumed Big Brother knew everything you did. Do you know how to lead people across state borders? Do you know what your neighbor's skills are? You figured out who the veterans are in your neighborhood and ask them how they would defend it if necessary. I don't think, I think people are going generally just way too far with this. I think that we're going to have seasons of grift and gulf, and they're just trying to break government regulation. Is what they're trying to do right now. But like, of course, 390 million for Cybertrucks is not fraud, waste, and abuse, right? So like, it's just everyone is going straight to Germany, and like 1986 Brazil is right there. Venezuela is right there. And this is like part of why I spend so much time talking about this, is because like the whole point of getting you in an apocalypse mindset, why it works so well for cults, is because if you think it's all going to end, there's nothing you can do. You're not going to do anything. When the rockets are coming in, right? The Children of God literally had a song produced for this. It was called 20 Minutes to Go. How much love can you show? It can still be found on YouTube. And it is exactly this like sort of situation that they had in Hawaii when they accidentally sent out the alarm. And it's like, what do? You sit down and you hug your family. And that's what they want you to do. But like, I lived in Mexico where you just had to have money in the car all the time to bribe the cops when you go out, and better hope you never actually need police for anything. Like, people still are free. Systems don't work. Everybody, like, this is what me and my cult neighbor are telling us. They're like, oh, we'll be okay in our houses. Like, no, people are going to come steal your stuff. The craziest thing to me about leaving Latin America and landing in the US was that there were just big houses on the streets. Like, you just don't have that in Brazil. Everything valuable is behind a wall. Apartments, bars on the windows. Like, this is because the stratification between the rich and the poor is very broad. One of the things that made America special was we were the first country to ever have a middle class that was larger than our poverty class or our wealthy class. Right? In most nations still, I mean, now a lot of the world's nations have caught up, and we are losing it. I know this isn't South America, honey. I grew up there. I'm talking about similarities and differences. I think it's important to look at all of this stuff. This is exactly like, in no country can you hold really by force unless you have trained the people. And in many Latin American countries, the people have been trained. This is why outside of Brazil, all Latin countries, including Mexico, did very well with COVID. Because when the military comes marching down your streets, like they did in Buenos Aires when we were on the last flight out, and tells you to stay in your house, you stay in your house, right? In Germany, same. Germans joke that they never had a popular revolution because the peasants couldn't afford the train fare. And heaven forbid you don't pay the train fare to get to the revolution, right? In America, we'll rip up your train lines. I say again, we'll rip up your train lines. Like, so the personality of the country is very important. We are also, again, the most heavily armed people. And if I could, I would tell you things about Afghanistan that would help us realize that, but I can't. So you'll have to go read some of the Vet Bros books, but just imagine you're on the other side. But it doesn't matter if you have helicopters, if you have mountains high enough that you can shoot down on them. And we do. It's not, see, especially when I was talking about the internet going down and people were like, well, Texas lost power, right? And people died. And in Helene, they lost power and people just helped each other. And like, you did not lose everything at once. The internet goes down, you lose everything at once. There's some redundancies for the power grid, I'm sure. I hope. Basically, I hope there's a generator for the power grids that doesn't run on the internet. That would be smart of them. And I assume there is, because the intelligence community has been talking about this being the largest disaster since at least 2010 when I went to spy school. But we also had a pandemic plan until Felon 47 gutted it. So but I also continue to remind you that like the people that want you panicking are profiting off of you panicking. Like that girl that was like, we're going to war in Canada. She made a lot of money from that video. Makes a lot less money to be like, no, we're not doing that. Sit down. Let's talk about what's really actually happening in our country right now. Yeah, and during Katrina, for example, helicopters coming in to help were fired on more than during the initial invasion of Iraq. People did not just act lovely and help each other. There was a lot of what we look at and see in emergencies. And I will tell you that how it generally goes in these large apocalypse planning scenarios, like as soon as you run out of food, all bets are off. That's why I'm like, if you have 3 months of food stocked away, you better have a lot of guns and be willing to use them on people who are just hungry. And someone made this point that was like, this is why leftist preppers are focused on community supplies. When systems suddenly come to a crashing halt, many people usually do not survive. Right, like 15 million Chinese people paid the price for the Great Leap Forward, and 30 million Soviets, I believe, for communizing their farms. And this is what we haven't wanted to talk about in America. Like, Small towns are dying. That stuff is not coming back. But heaven forbid we talk about that, because farmers might get mad. And so instead, this time we'll all just watch the Dust Bowl, but on television. What did he say? The revolution will be televised. So I think like we're trying to do this in our, like we live in already like a little sort of planned community with a local watering hole. And I'm just starting to just like ask people about what skills they have. Because that's a good thing to know. Ask people what skills they have, right? Patrolling your neighborhood as a woman, that's awesome. Just like knowing the good entrance and exit points out of your neighborhood. But also, like, threat briefs are good, right? You talk about the threat, you talk about all the bad, horrible things that could happen, and then you like are like, okay, now we're prepared, and you go back to your mission. Right. And the main, I'll never forget, like halfway through my first deployment as an intelligence officer, when I realized, I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter what they say. It doesn't really matter what scenario we give them, because that's not going to happen. Right. Like first plan never makes it past contact with the enemy. Right. So it's that exactly is not going to happen. But if you're prepared for something, then you're more prepared. And so in this vein, the Department of Defense in 2012, the Department of Homeland Security in 2012 put out prepare for the zombie apocalypse posters. I tried to get them, but it's hard to get the Department of Defense to talk to the Department of Homeland Security. But I loved it because this was the era of Pride and Prejudice and zombies and blah, blah, blah. And like, they were like, we're not going to get people to prepare if we say prepare for earthquakes, prepare for flash floods, prepare for whatever. But like, if we say prepare for the zombie apocalypse, people will go gamify it and have fun with it. And then they'll be more prepared for real things. But also please be aware that a lot of apocalypse fiction and prepper stuff is kind of just like disguised white supremacy fantasies, right? Like dehumanize a population and then nobody has a problem with you just like going and hunting them. So, you know, prepare at your own risk. The jacket version of Neurosparkly. I love that. Definitely have a Neurosparkly family. Kid describing ADHD. Mommy, with our kind of brains, like we see stuff is there, but then it just kind of disappears, and then we run into it. Yes, that's called bad proprioception. Sometimes I'm so jealous of this generation of just like having the words for things. You know, I had to write a whole book for then my people to be like, oh, you described disassociation very well. And then I learned about crunchy things, how they help us feel like we're in our body. And so then I was teaching knitting Cold Baby, and I was like, do you ever feel like you're just kind of like in your head? And she's like, oh, Mommy, I do that all the time. So we can use crunchy things. She also loves to crunch dry leaves. So yeah. During fall, we have to take twice as long to walk. Oof, I'm trying. Let's see how many we're going to make it through. But the good news is the mail now comes to me and carries them away. So Mr. Call Lady doesn't have to go to the post office every day. Which is nice, since he probably is not going to be able to use an arm for a while. Yeah, I mean, if you overanalyze, you just get stuck in the like what if and what could be, and that's why it's just like it's a another interesting part of being an intelligence. It's like you learn that like you're still going to go do the mission, almost certainly, and at some point, like the people going out there know the threat as well as you do, pretty much. So like by the time they planned a mission there, they pretty much know what they're going into. Timeless Trends is a good place to find courses. Okay. This is a fun story. So I was probably 24. I was a lieutenant in the Army, a first lieutenant. I was already the senior intelligence officer in my battalion. And I'm 24. And so a bunch of my girlfriends, military officers, and like one or two military spouses, and everyone was either single or person was deployed. But then I had a boyfriend. So I was like, we're all going to dress up like classy Playboy bunnies with corsets and awesomeness. And he was Hugh Hefner. Okay, so then we're out in Nashville, which is like an hour away from the base. And my boyfriend runs into somebody that I don't know. He's like, oh, hey, Todd, blah, blah, blah. Gooniest looking man I've ever seen. Anyway. And, we end up talking to this guy, blah, 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 whatever. And then like a week later, we're like, oh, the new commander's coming in, of like, not the battalion commander who I work for, but the headquarters company commander. Oh, the thing Hog's Breath did, where you're in charge of like the paperwork. So just like same rank, but I don't answer to. But anyway, there's a thing. He's the commander. And I was like, and they're like, who is it? And they're like, oh, Todd so-and-so. That's the story of the time that the first time I met my commander, I was dressed as a Playboy bunny. And then, so he's coming around, he's meeting people. He's like, hey, at this time, actually, he was the captain. I was first lieutenant. So he outranked me. And I'm like, hey, sir, I'm Lieutenant Mestenek. He's like, oh, yeah, I know, we've met. And I'm like, no, we haven't. I'm Lieutenant Mestenek. Nice to meet you. Yeah. The military doesn't really forgive things like that. He would later be the one to tell me, take one for the team. The t-shirt I was wearing earlier today. Yes, I'm sorry, Daniela. We are going to burn you as a witch, but don't be mad at us. That's an uncultured. We are getting into bed with countries that have the worst human rights records because we are being run by a man who wants to be a dictator. Like, he said it. We know what they want. It remains to be seen what will ignite the mass movement that stops them. But I keep saying, in Brazil, I think it was during the lead up to when they were going to host the World Cup. But anyways, in this state called Manaus, which is part of where the Amazon is, the soccer fans got so mad at a call the referee made that after the game, they stormed the field and pulled his head off. Numbers. When America gets mad, You can't run America by force. I don't even think you can run the American military by force, but they're gonna try. I think they're gonna find out that you can't change a culture of a 2 million person organization overnight. But we shall see. This is a lot of books, and I don't have any boxes. So yesterday we read the labor chapter. So this week we're finishing up the us versus them chapter, which is chapter 7. And then we're going to do exit cost. Sorry. Then we're going to do exploitation of labor research. But I'm specifically picking on several industries: fast fashion, agriculture, performance, and restaurants. A lot of those industries where we're like, no, you can't work children unless the parents say it's okay. Then the labor laws don't apply. Or unless the children are brown, then labor laws don't apply. America. Actually, I'm giving a talk soon on shiny, happy religious trafficking, I believe. Yeah. It is like America is way too big to be ruled by force, has way too many people to be ruled by force, and I don't actually believe like the American Constitution would stand for it. And I mean constitution of self, but also the American Constitution. But again, we shall see. Somebody was like, will the military support Donald Trump if he changes the Constitution legally? Will the military support the commander-in-chief if he changes the Constitution legally? Yes, as they have always done. So we're just going to have to hope that he can't change the Constitution legally. They opened a bagel place up near me. I really hope they have a gluten-free bagel. I was gonna go over there and check it out, but then I had to go pick up Mr. Knitting Car Lady from his scooter crash. New York. I hope to be in New York this summer. That's an LGBTQ. Is it making laws? He said to me he wasn't told what. Well, I know they're already talking about their lavender marriages and the way couples can marry each other and live 4 in a house. And it'll be scary because everybody is out there. Everybody's out already, but also everybody's out already, right? Like, you can't unring a bell. Like, it has been proven that soldiers of any orientation can fight. It has been proven that soldiers of any gender can fight. It has been proven that it doesn't matter who's next to you in the foxhole as long as they're an effing soldier. So, like, you can't put toothpaste back in the tube, right? It was hard for them to keep us out of these things, even when they were just like, can't be done. But now that we know that our uteruses won't fall out if we run marathons, it's hard for them to stop us from running marathons, even though we win more of them than they do. Like, there are Black military officers. There are women military officers. There are lots of those two things. Like, you can't just unwoke the military. Like, it's too late. The wokeness virus. They didn't catch it in time. Just like drugs won the war on drugs, I'm pretty sure that woke is going to win the war on woke. And women notice the silly things. Exactly. Oh my gosh, y'all. I'm going to have custom knitting needles made for the next book launch. And I've decided I'm going to try to make them look like swords. I like this jacket. It was my Christmas present for myself like 2 years ago, I think. Oh, chilly. Yeah, I know that it is not a word that should be used by people with a lack of melanin. However, when it is being used as a weaponization of a term by people with a lack of melanin, then other people with a lack of melanin need to address that. I think. Yeah, like progress always wins, right? They tried to say Jane Austen's novels were going to destroy the world, and like Jane Austen's novels are still out there. We, like White Woman Whisperer says on our podcast, hey white women, all the time. She's like, Black people were human the whole time. Women and minorities, we've been capable and equal humans the whole time. They just didn't let us into the room to show it until civil rights and DEI and affirmative action and all the things that mostly benefited white women. But now they have. So like, once again, they kept women out of running marathons because they had folks believing that your uterus would fall out. They can't get us to believe that anymore. They can't just be like, women are banned from running marathons. I mean, they can try. Oops. Of course I spilled my muffin down my corset top. What was I saying about ADHD? Bigger envelope. My audiobook is free if you are a Spotify subscriber. So I would look there first. It's also in many, many libraries. I think it's like $14 credit on Audible or something. I don't know. It has very little to do with the ownership and marketing of the audiobook, unfortunately. It's just my story and my voice. Oh, come on. People have said that this is a psyop, and I think it's amazing that men like think they recognize it when it's boobs, but they don't when it's knitting. This is how I know women will win the revolution. Somebody said I was mentioned on television the other day. lady knitting? Yeah, you got mentioned. I was like, amazing. They haven't come back to follow up on it because I asked somewhere, but the villain that became president, I mean, probably. He's been at this for a long time, but also Mr. Reagan was the first one to say it. Donald Trump was just the one to copyright it and then use it for his mass movement. The thing I just wrote about. Mention on Don Lemon's live. Who's Don Lemon's live? Yeah, I mean, I hope we make it through to another election. Somebody's on TikTok's been mentioning me because it's selling my book, even though my book is turned off. Thank you. What is going on with the lobster on the bases? Like, why are people freaking out about this? The military serves soldiers surf and turf on Fridays. Often, not all the time, but often. And it is prison quality steak and prison quality lobster. What are we mad about? I truly believed I hated lobster until I had lobster in Maine. Like, that's how bad it is. This is not a thing to be furious about. This is like being mad that kids on WIC get birthday cakes. Just stop. Our food literally comes in packaging that says, only for use by the Department of Corrections and the Department of Defense. We also once didn't have a single fresh thing for 3 months in Kandahar because somebody flew across the border, and in retaliation, the Pakistanis closed the gates of trucking. And after 3 months, this is the kind of thing where I lose my mind with Americans. After 3 months of only eating whatever the Air Force could fly in, so basically we had nothing fresh, we come in one day and there's just a huge pile of grapes. And the way people bished about them having seeds. Americans. It was part of my rant called Seedless Grapes, because America has absolutely traded flavor for not having seeds and things, and it's ridiculous. Our grapes just taste like balls of water. And it's so sad, because grapes are my faves. Oh, everyone thinks it means they're deploying. When the military is deploying, we're all going to know about it at the same time. Soldiers are not going to tell you about it because they got lobster. I promise you, we will know. Or we will not know, just like we don't know about most countries we have a military presence in. But that's a story for Guantanamo. No, it's like Americans don't have this ability to like sort things with their tongue. And it's so strange for me because I grew up in Brazil, and like when you eat a passion fruit, you don't chew the seeds. You just gum it around and swallow it. Pomegranates, when you eat feijoada, you don't just chaw down on some bones. You just sort it around. And I have had Americans ask me if I was trying to unalive them because I didn't teach them to eat. And they're a grown-up. And I'm like, you don't have to announce your departure. It's not the theater. It's Miranda. Maybe it's Miranda Priestley. Yay, I'm glad you started wearing red lipstick again. which was funny because like last year I found my perfect like plum color that I like, and I'm like so autistic that just the same color is fine for me. And then this year I was like, nah, it's got to be red. Gotta have some red most of the time, unless what I'm wearing clashes with red. Why do people keep asking me how old I am? I am 37. Yep, definitely trying to affect our schools. I don't know, one of the big freak out things around here is they're like, over the summer, they're going to go through every school in America and they take out all the books. And when we come back, it's going to be a blah, blah, blah. I think like looking young and old at the same time is like a cult baby thing. Like somebody on YouTube was like, how can you look both 20 and 40 at the same time, or 50, whatever they said. I was like, I feel like that's a good description of a cult baby. And one of the things is because I am biologically from Slovakia and Hungary, mostly, you know, of the places where vampires come from. It's funny when Irish people think they're the whitest because they are white with red and I am white with blue. And so putting my underarm next to an Irish person is always fun. But because I grew up with unmitigated sun exposure in Latin America, I was allergic to the sun by the age of 19. And so I have basically had to protect myself from the sun. This is part of why I ended up with so many scarves, because I love to go hot places in the world, but I always have to be all covered up. And then I invented the scarf again. But like I had a scar on my back for 7 years from my wedding, from getting sunburned accidentally. So that's part of, and kind of technology and stuff keeping us more inside is kind of as a whole why they're saying Gen X and millennials are aging like wine instead of milk. But I also think it's just because I don't dress like 37-year-old women think they have to. And then finally, well, I also get Botox as a migraine treatment, and I have been since I was like 28. I think it's starting to make my eyebrows look funny. Finally, what else? Those of us that were born as apocalypse children were like not expecting to ever grow old. So I am determined to just enjoy all my signs of aging. Getting some white hair. It's like under this streak now, but it doesn't color very well. So, and I'm just like, I just want either witchy, like really awesome gray and white hair, or really witchy gray and white hair. Either one will be lovely. Yeah, I know. I'm angry about the revolution, and I feel like I'm doing the secular version of like pleading with God to not make me have to be part of a revolution, because I just like had a really hard first 30 years. Like I just wanted to be rich and comfortable and enjoy my next 30 years. Like, and I'm just mad that we don't get to do that, because the world has to fall apart and my people are running the government. I absolutely recommend Botox for migraines, especially if you, so I have this kind of migraine that is called Alice in Wonderland migraines, or confusional migraines, or basically migraines are not headaches. They are varicose veins in the head. So a lot of treatments for migraines will like sort of freeze your veins in different positions. This is why coffee can help. I used to be out in the field and I would just get coffee packet out of an MRE, just dry, dump it down my mouth and chug water. But so when you have migraines in regular parts of your head, you feel the pain and the light sensitivity and all this stuff. When your brain stem is the one seizing up, you are at a very high risk for stroke. If you take most migraine medications, you are at a risk for stroke. And when you have a really, really bad migraine, it feels like you're having a stroke. I haven't had one of those in quite a few years because of the Botox. However, I will say that it's really hard to get approved for Botox because men hate women and basically have been like, if women knew that Botox was a treatment for migraines, all of a sudden everyone would have migraines. So they really make you go through it. And basically because the military have been trying to unalive me for so many years and I have good health care because it's through the veteran stuff, I was able to get it approved. But usually you have to go through at least a year of trying everything else and nothing working before your insurance will be like, okay, fine, we'll let her have Botox. And they try to tell you it's not the same Botox as you would get. That is a lie. It's just a lot more. It's like, my face, but then like all over my head, my neck, tops of my shoulders. Sometimes they'll give me the TMJ one. And it is very painful. The only thing worse than getting 50 needles in the face is migraines. Oh, damn it. Yeah, so, and how do you know if you have Alice in Wonderland migraines? If you hear the term Alice in Wonderland migraines and you think, yes. My doctor asked me to explain my migraines. My neurologist named Dr. I. And he was like, explain your migraines to me. And then he just says, have you ever heard of Alice in Wonderland migraines? And I was like, and a lot of times, if it never progresses to pain, because again, it's on your brainstem, it's not, they just tell you have an anxiety disorder. And it's like, yeah, it makes you really anxious when the world starts melting around you or time ceases to have meaning or all the space is sucked out of the room or things just start getting giant or tiny. Like, yeah, that's anxiety producing. However, anxiety is not the cause. Allison migraine, it is different than the syndrome, but neither of them are understood enough, I think, for doctors to be saying you have Alice in Wonderland syndrome if they haven't ruled out Alice in Wonderland migraines. So I would say that. Just like I wonder if Taylor Tomlinson actually does have bipolar disorder or if she just had a therapist that doesn't understand cult trauma. Yeah, I mean, the pain is sucky, but yeah, it's crazy. And especially when you're like trying to get doctors to listen to you and they won't because it's all in your head. That's the other thing with my migraines. Like I only got good care because I was literally lactating while never having had a baby. There was a physical sign that they could not ignore. Oh, also, did I mention that cults hate medical care? Every time. How dare you be an individual? I know. It's the brains in the head. They tried it, even with the spontaneous lactation. They still tried to be like, I'm pretty sure it's all in her head. Maybe we should just send her back to Afghanistan. So then my best friend who was working at Walter Reed had to get Dick Wolf. Yes, not that one. The one from Band of Brothers is no longer alive. His nephew has the same name and is a veteran of both the 101st and the 82nd. And so he lives in DC and throws his name around to help 101st and 82nd veterans. So I got him to get me out of Walter Reed in under 3 months, not get sent back to Afghanistan, and get sent home so I could go get married and get better. And that was lovely. You don't want to be at Walter Reed with an invisible injury. It's not the best for illness, Also, fun fact. So in the military, if you have any sort of physical condition where you have to be like protected from somebody making you work out, they give you this thing called a profile, right? And the profile can be because of injury, I broke my arm, or because of illness, I have a brain tumor, right? Pregnancy is one of the things they put you on a profile for. And since they don't want to call it an illness, they call it an injury. And you are not allowed to be forced to do XYZ until the pregnancy is term. Yes, they use that language. Like men, because men wrote the regulations about how menstruation in the military should be handled. And men decided that women have to have access to facilities with running water every 3 days. Otherwise, we would just die because of our periods. And then men used that idiotic, ridiculous thing that they made up and wrote down to keep us out of combat and therefore out of advancement in our chosen fields. And this is a big part of why love of the written word is a tenet of white supremacy. And if you want to know more about that, check out White Woman Whisperer. Yeah, they literally forgot to ask women, like even their own wives. And that we're literally like, it's not like there were no women. We were right there saying, yeah, no, we don't. And they're like, sorry. You know, this private who's never spent 9 days in the field in his life being like, sorry, y'all can't do it because lady junk. When a population is not capable of doing something, we don't have to make regulations and legislations to keep them out of doing it. Like I did not have to have any rules in my house that Mr. Knitting Cult Lady was not allowed to feed Knitting Cult Baby, breastfeed her. Like, just because I thought he was going to be bad at it. Like, did you know, fun fact, that the reason we don't have strict scrutiny for the sexes, so we do have it for race, right? There's been nothing found to make people different by race. And so you cannot discriminate by race in giving jobs, and therefore it's held under strict scrutiny. We do not have that for women. Why? This was RBG's crusade that she did not win, because there is one job that as women, as previously defined, only women could do, which is wet nursing. And so because we can do an extra thing, we get less rights because men wrote the rules. Oh, women can't win. Men wrote the rules. Oh, if you run marathons, your uteruses are going to fall out. Men wrote the rules. I did not see Hegseth drinking at the podium. I've just been here signing books. I don't have a phone, so I can't even let my therapist know why I'm missing therapy. I'm just here signing books. I'm so sorry about how late they are. Well, but they did ask her, right? It was like she was going for 6 days, and they were like, is 100 tampons going to be enough? And I like it when I talk about how this ridiculous is, and people are like, nuh-uh, I mean, they got stuck. So like, all right, let me tell you, having more tampons than food and water is not going to help you. And whatever resupplies the food and water can resupply the tampons. Okay, thanks. My books were sold out. Technically, they still are because I haven't caught up yet. But someone has a link because I've been selling today. But I got some. Basically, I am getting them from Jeff Bezos as fast as he will print them while I wait for the order of 500 I was supposed to have 2 months ago. This has been not fun. It is available on the audiobook. It's Audiobook's been in the New York Times twice, and it is now available on Spotify if you are a subscriber. So, and it's like, it's so silly to think that, like, they're like, oh, we don't want women, we don't want mothers, we don't want blah, blah, blah. But, like, we're going to send pilots to go do survival. Do you know what a good survival asset a breastfeeding woman is? Bet you never thought about that, huh? Y'all have no other food, but there's two of you and one of you is making food. You can both survive. Crazy how that works. This is my apocalypse skill, by the way. I'm pretty sure I have the best one. And that is that the spontaneous lactation hath never resolved. And when Knitting Cult Baby came out, so did 100 ounces of milk over what she was eating every day. I literally could not leave the house for 2 hours without a pump. And so then I fed 7 babies. And so my apocalypse skill, in addition to spinning the yarns, is just going to be breastfeeding all of the children. New York just refused sending information. Good. Yeah, I've had the link in my bio open, but I've had the TikTok, like my product that is set up here is at 0, so I don't really understand what's happening, but it's okay. We'll have enough books by early next week to close everything out, and then they shall appear again. We're just trying to figure out the logistics of still doing signed books, but Knitting Cult Lady also having time to like write the books and do the things that people are trying to have. Military enlistment motivations vary, but no, pretty split across. There's about half, usually under half, that are doing it because of like patriotism and messaging, or it's in their family, and then most of the rest are doing it because it is the best social elevator in the country, and poverty hits left and right. And then a small percentage of it are doing it because they think they're just going to get to run around with pew-pews and unalive people. And unless they make it into the special forces, they're not. Sorry, the Rangers. Potentially special forces. Ooh, people also usually know the difference between Rangers and special forces missions. I should tell you all about that. And it is quite simple. Rangers mission are what we call capture/unalive, which is kicking down doors and going in and taking people in the night. And special forces mission is to train other militaries. This is a big part of why America is so secure in the world, because we trained them. We gave them their equipment and we trained them. Still shocked after crocheting for over a year. Yeah. I mean, I think crocheting is like 3D printing. You can just like make what you want with it, which is really cool. Fiber arts teacher, great teacher, be good in an apocalypse. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Everyone has to think about the things they're good at, because it might not be an actual apocalypse, but we're definitely living through historic times. I don't actually know why Elizabeth Warren is saying things. Like, I don't have special access to anything. I just can only basically give background information on the military at this point. My thoughts on cartels owning military-grade weapons is the reason Trump is not picking a war with Mexico. He's just like King Henry VIII. I want a war, and I'm gonna make one. I think it'll work. I think the international community is better than Donald Trump, but we shall see. We all got pretty fooled by George Bush, so. Yeah, I decided I was going to get fun envelopes because it would be better. Like, why does thinking about is the U.S. going to invade Mexico in the next 2 years? Like, why does that matter today? And how would anyone possibly be able to, like, give a knowledgeable answer on that? Nobody even knows what he's going to do in 2 weeks. Like, what we can do right now is live through this and figure out how we're going to live through this. Like, the time to avoid all of this was when people didn't vote for Kamala because of Jenny. So here we are. We all live in a cult now. But you know what? North Korea doesn't have many wars with people. The rest of the world gets a vote too. Already master's programs are like, international master's programs are floundering because nobody's coming to the US right now. Yeah, the international, it's like, again, like international politics, I just feel like is a grown-up version of kids on a school playground. But like, he can stomp around America right now and our government is not stopping him. But like, he's still just one of the leaders of state in the world. And I also think people have to, like, people really forget that, like, soldiers have to be motivated to go to war. Even in wars that are good wars, like World War II, soldiers have to be motivated to go to war. People are like, oh, we're going to go to war with Canada. How? Explain to me how you are going to get the American servicemen and women motivated to go unalive Canadians. Especially considering the fact that many of us have worked closely with their military because that was the case in Afghanistan. I mean, look, they pulled out early and they took Tim Hortons with them. So I might be willing to drop like a little JDAM or something because I'm still bitter. It is obviously facetiousness. And this is part of, I think, how people don't understand how the military works. Even Senator Elizabeth Warren, like, I was the senior intelligence officer in a battalion of helicopters, and I was the person with the most knowledge of how to do aviation intelligence in the battalion. And if you had told me we're going to gather intelligence for an invasion of Canada, I would have sat down and said, no, sir, you're not. I'm not going to let you into your vaults. and you can drag me away, but there's nobody here to take my place. And enough people do that, and your unit's not going anywhere. Military intelligence is full of left-leaning liberals. Yeah, we are very similar to Canada. It was hard to motivate Americans to go to a completely foreign country and unalive people who they could be convinced were very different from them. Like, sure, it would be a court-martial, but again, so what? I'm going to go sit in jail for 2 years until my contract is up before I'm going to go help you invade Canada. Right? Like, we don't live in a world anymore where it's like, do it or you're done. Like, and also some people would choose that. Like when people are like, oh, martial law, I would literally walk out my door in my slippers, put the rifle right there, look that 19-year-old in the eye and dare them. Current members do share my convictions, at least almost 50% of the military. And you can't even run successful combat operations without like 20%. You lose 20%, which is women, by the way. If you just kicked all the women out right now, or just realized that they weren't going to go along with massacring their own people or next door neighbors, like, you basically can't do successful military operations. It's too late. You can't unwoke the woke military. I literally, one of my lifelong best friends, like, we used to laugh that we could have married, except that he was an officer in the Canadian Army and I was an officer in the American Army. Like, I'm not going to go to war against him. Yeah. Unlike Russia, unlike Germany, unlike many Latin countries, we are an armed nation. But we are the most armed nation in history. Oh, I'm determined to make it through this. And then we broke a bunch of books. Bad enough. And this is another thing. I don't think that many people think about, like, many of the current young people that make up the bulk of the United States military have absolutely no combat experience. 2 million of us here on this side, we have a lot. And we specifically have a lot of the type of combat experience called insurgency. And the one thing about insurgency is the insurgents always win. Again, you hole up in some of those gullies in Idaho, you can fly all the helicopters in the world they want. Doesn't help them out when you can shoot down at them. We know this because we all watched them use this to beat us. Insurgency is when individuals try to go against the government and they have a big enough point and enough political reasoning that it's not necessarily terrorism, although it's often just, if you get big enough, now it's an insurgency, is what we're going to call it. Longest lasting one, I think, has been the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, who are still going. So when David Petraeus in 2010 named what we were doing over there as a counterinsurgency, and everyone just got down on their knees and started worshiping him, we failed to be like, should we be listening to the intelligence officers that are repeatedly telling us that nobody has ever won a counterinsurgency? No, we were just like, we're going to go win the hearts and minds. So, you know. This is a civilian with no military experience. I mean, again, like there's, in every mass movement, there is a tipping point. Almost no culture has ever given back rights without a fight. At some point, he will infringe on our liberty in a way that we are not going to just take from inside of our little castles, and we're going to fight back. But not as far as everybody's like, oh, we can't go protest or martial law. And then people are, and I'm like, no, you go outside anyway. And they're like, oh, but they have guns. Yeah, did you think we were all going to survive the revolution? Some people are not going to make it when fighting against a government that is trying to become tyrannical. Some people don't make it now. I really don't want to lead a revolution. I'm like trying super hard. But I already know, like, look, if they come for veteran benefits, like, we're going to be marching. I conveniently can lead a Washington, D.C. march. I will just be fighting a bunch of other people that will be trying to lead it. Yeah, you either succumb or you fight. That's what happens. How do you survive a cult you can't leave? You survive and you resist. And not all of us survived. Not all of us even survived the aftermath. That's why the children of God's self-deleting rates have been compared to Holocaust survivors, unfortunately. Yeah, I like this one. Either face the guns now at a protest or face someone at 3 a.m. when they come to your door to drag you away. Like, at some point, we're gonna go do it. it'll be over the Department of Education, honestly. I don't think you own a gun. Like, I'm like, seriously, if you have weapons, that gives them more reason, right? Like, if I just, like, again, like, if they came marching down my street, I would literally walk out there with a bunch of stuffies and, like, maybe some cookies and some pink wine and, like, talk to them and invite them to my little street party. It'd be really hard for them to justify mowing me down because I wasn't inside my house. And as we know, America's not ready to see dead mommies, white mommies. They've been weaponizing that against women in the military for centuries. So figuring out the logistics are going to be, but I'm going to start somehow collecting white women that want to get ready. And our military maneuver is going to be called Just the Tip. Put all the white ladies in front, just march them into wherever we want to go. And also some people are like, oh, okay, so what happens if you get pew-pewed? Like, I'll go down as the hero that started the revolution rather than have to live through what these freaking extremists actually want. Right? Imagine if they did. Imagine if they did mow this down in suburbia. Oh, Nick, since you have the mic, let us know what you're doing, bro. We're all waiting because at least I'm here making a video, which is what I think you meant to say. You're just here being a hater and hating some money into my bank account. There's all these ways you know you're not on the wrong side of history. And one of the ways I know that I'm not on the wrong side of history is because I've never felt the need to go into anyone else's thing and just tell them that they're terrible. But yeah, we're still waiting to know what you're doing, Nick. You, ostensibly a man with a far more powerful voice than mine. What are you doing with your powerful man voice about what is going on in our country right now? Oh, I hope I put the right name in there. I also love it. Everyone's taking up knitting. Yeah, like this. Who wants to live long enough to be a slave or a handmaiden? Exactly. Like, but also, again, like, African Americans were dehumanized, enslaved, not allowed to be educated or read, and they still beat it back. Like, people will survive and beat oppression. It's just going to be shitty for a while, probably. And some people will not survive. And we need to be looking at I know places I can hide. My brother, who Donald Trump doesn't think should exist. I know places. I strongly believe that when we deconstruct white supremacy, then it's our job to use whiteness as a shield for those who don't have it and as a weapon against those who are trying to use it. So I hope that that's like what the 48% of women, white women that didn't vote for Donald Trump, are doing right now with their time and their freedom. Because I would not say that I'm mostly a 1989 girl. I mean, I'm an everything. Knocked off my horse on the road to Damascus when I heard Tim McGraw, converted to Swiftianity, all of it. But definitely Torture Clothes Department is the most amazing thing that has ever been written. Although lately I've been doing Kendrick Lamar, so why are we barking? What is going on? You've just been ignored for hours and you're not okay with it anymore. Oh, I don't know. Like, I need to know, was Bad Blood like before? Because I know in the Drake Kendrick beef, like he's like, yeah, you go right for Swifties, blah blah blah. Taylor Swift's your mommy. But was Bad Blood before that? Or was Bad Blood like, was Kendrick parts like about that? What are we doing? Come here. Shall we say hi? Okay, but with your 20-pound bag of rice that you buy every time you go shopping, with your 3-month supply of food that you're going to have, do you also have a huge stockpile of weapons to defend that from your neighbors? And are you prepared to use it? Stuff preppers don't think about. This is style. Also known as knitted cult puppy. No, you don't need that guidance. You don't need to shoot your neighbors. You need to prepare your community, but also understand that the way you're going to survive whatever you're afraid of is not by having tons of bags of rice in your home. Like, the prepper mentality is very individualistic, and we're not going to individual our way out of any of this. Yeah, the preppers talk about openly defending their stock. Exactly. It's like, if you, unless all of your neighbors also have a 3-month supply of food, like, none of you are okay. They're either going to come try to unalive you to feed their kids, or you're going to have to unalive them to keep your supplies. Let's not pretend that we have any sort of real community bonds in America that we're going to fall back on that much. So it would be crazy. I also don't think we're there yet. But yes, individualism is how we got into this mess. That's why America is so culty. Keeping America first is another huge part of it. And also why the rest of the world, it's like, so my description of American exceptionalism is that she's the little girl whose daddy told her she's the prettiest girl in the world, and now she's a grown-up and she still believes it, and so nobody wants to hang out with her. And like, that's kind of what we did to the rest of the world after World War II. We're like, we are the best, down with all the rest. And every time we show up to play, we're like, hey, remember that time that we showed up and we saved the day? Aren't we cool? Don't you want to tell us how cool we are? And now, like, the rest of the world is like, okay, America. Show us how cool you are. Oh, nope. Something pinged in my ear. I thought that meant Mr. Knitting Coal Lady was getting back. And if you're a senior, I don't think you're going to be on the front lines of the battles. Battles tend to be fought by the young, but definitely can probably help with skills and supplies and knowledge. Somebody pointed out, like, Nobody buys books of how to fix things anymore or how to do things anymore because we can all just look it up on the internet. But like, what if the internet suddenly went away? You know, again, like, know the cult babies and know the veterans in your neighborhood because we know how to do stuff. I can make clothes out of plastic bags. Not that we're ever going to be lacking for clothing and a world drowning in plastic, but you know, my husband can fix a helicopter or sling load an Apache. You can also jump up on your counter, punch a hole in your ceiling, fix the leak, but then never fix up the ceiling. Oh, I was trying to show it. I don't know if I can. Whoops, what happened here? Lost the YouTube. Someone can fix glasses. That's a good one. I can speak Portuguese. You know why that's a good skill? Not a lot of people in the U.S. Army that can speak Portuguese. Ask me how I know. Which means you could use it as a code. That's why knitting worked in World War II, knitting patterns. Not a lot of men that could read knitting patterns. Because, you know, apparently it must be done with a penis. Said it on the beginning of this live, but this live has been so long. But I love that they just like underestimate women so hard. It's just why we're gonna win. I don't think they're iridescent envelopes, but they're just pretty. It turned out they were cheaper than the. Yeah, so like this is one thing, right? Like, what do older women do? If you go and look back at like village times, it's like they're watching the children while the young men and women are out fighting or hunting or whatever's going on, right? So it's like in a community, like everyone can play a role in the survival of the community. This is why, after writing a whole book about how groups suck, we're going to have White Woman Whisperer give us an awesome chapter on community versus groups. I do not happen to be in Oregon. I happen to be outside of DC. College Park, Maryland is where I hold my monthly happy hours. And hopefully I have enough assistance to come up with a better way for people to get in touch so they can come to happy hours. Because yeah, community versus groups. And like, I've learned a really important lesson because I came here new and started building my groups in a very diverse area. And still, when I look around, my groups are overly white. But when I just like hang out at the local watering hole and build community there, my community is very diverse. And that's, someone asked earlier how we chose DC. That's basically. Looked around ourselves in 2020, living in Seattle. My husband was retiring and we were deciding some big decisions. And we were like, yeah, we're not going to raise a white child in a very, very, very white part of the country without like just passing down, perpetuating stereotypes and whatnot. So we said, okay, we're going to drive around the country and figure out where we want to live in a giant RV. And we did. I'm going to write a little bit about that in On American. I have a video book, which you can access on my Patreon. See, there's some woman's a firefighter. Like, that's a good thing to know. If you just have someone that has like firefighting skills in your neighborhood, even if that's not something they use. Like, you don't know what it's going to be, right? Or a combination of Mr. Knitting Coat Lady being who he is, plus owning an aircraft in the DC airspace. Like he would always have enough information to like know where the president was going on any given day. And I would be like, does the Secret Service know about this? Yeah, making home remedies, but just like, again, just like knowing how to do things, right? Like when we don't know how to do something now, we rely on the internet to tell us how to do it, which is great. Information age, tons of stuff, right? Tons of y'all have told me you learned how to knit and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you don't have access to the internet, either because you're trying to not use a high-tech network because that's silly, 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 or because they have like turned it off to create a disaster, what things do you know how to do? And then the things that you don't know how to do other people know how to do them? Someone here can garden and raise animals and fix things. Yeah, my husband's also studying agriculture, so it's good. Said Mr. Knitting Goat Lady also grows and makes some pretty good sugars and gummies and stuff. Like, that's a good skill to have. Or just, y'all, just come to DC when things start getting bad. Yeah, talking about self-sustaining and like, I've often thought that like, if we all just decided we want community more than we want like individual success, the gig economy could end up being so cool. Because like we could all just only do our jobs, which we hopefully love, and then our hobbies. And like, if there was just someone that walked around this neighborhood twice a week and asked me what groceries I needed, and I just paid a premium for their time, I would do it in a heartbeat. I've been saying for like a decade now, if some enterprising dude just bought a gas truck, or a woman for that matter, bought a gas truck and just went around communities or office buildings and was like, what if I showed up every Tuesday and filled up your car for you? Would you pay X premium for that service? Right. And then every single thing, right? Someone could do trash, someone could do this. And then just like, and then we just have time to do art and live in community and like, but instead, we're stuck in capitalism. So, but I do give some of you those ideas, like we do live in a world right now where you can kind of go create your own thing. I know because I've done it. And my thing, by the way, it's funny because I was in this entrepreneur program and they laugh at me when I call myself an entrepreneur, I think, but I'm like, I saw a hole who's talking about the bad guys and the bad leaders and the bad groups. And then I built a thing to meet that hole, which is what entrepreneurs do. And like literally on my first day in Harvard at organizational psychology masters, I was like, we talked about the scientist practitioner gap. Right? Like they have all these studies about leadership, but what happens at your jobs is what Simon Sinek says. And I was like, oh, I can go be that. Like, I'm going to go. I was like, I'm going to be the Brene Brown of culture. But lately I realized that I'm the Taylor Swift of cults. Actually, what I'm going to be. But yeah, like get involved locally. Like, so Mr. Knitting Coat Lady went to this protest at VA headquarters and just like met a bunch of people. And we are like we don't want to run for office. We don't want to lead stuff, but like we're putting our names out there and letting people know like we're here, we're willing, here's what we bring to the table. And it was cool because they were all like, you're whose wife? Oh my gosh, we've read her book. Yeah, her husband, not wife. Sorry. being a mediator in the first IO class, and now you're taking the mediation course. Good thing. If you're trying to build community, having someone who's skilled at mediation and conflict, like White Woman Whisperer, and I agree on that. So we're like, in whiteness is very about conflict avoidance, but like conflict is not avoidable. So like, how do you manage it? How do you deal with it? How do you get through it? Like, these are the skills that we need to have. Who are the storytellers? Who are the artists? These are important skills when you live through really dark, trying times. You know, when you read about like children in the Holocaust who were like organizing their little plays that they would put on as they're all huddled in an apartment building, like hiding or waiting for stuff, and just like art and storytelling is part of how we survive all of these things. That was my first apocalypse skill that I came up with. I was like, I am the storyteller. The people that inspire people. We always have said, just for our own like navigating around the world, we're like, between me and Mr. Knitting Cult Lady, he's an operations beast and I'm intelligence. So like we can plan and execute a whole military mission. I wasn't thinking of it quite so maybe literally, but why do you just have to be growly? You're just gonna growl until I give you a treat, aren't you? I don't even know if I have the ones you like. Those ones. Hey, chill. All right. Nope, I'm gonna make it all the way through. I'm losing steam. Oh my gosh, he is funny. He can certainly be funny. He's like so little, and so like every once in a while he'll like go to jump up on the couch and he'll just miss, and he'll like tumble down a few stairs, and he always just looks at you like, how could you do that to me? And we're just trying not to laugh. Not named after the song, just named style, because Knitting Cult Baby and I, she was very into fashion. I still am. But of course, we were like, that's his theme song, is style. So we play it for him. It's fun. I recently made him a red sparkly cult coat because he grew out of his Build-A-Bear Santa Claus outfit, and that used to be how I spread Christmas cheer. What else? What are other good survival skills? Just like knowing what stuff you can eat. Like, that stuff is called plantain, but not the banana. It's just those leaves that grow in everyone's grass that are like considered a weed. It's actually like a superfood salad green. So like, you can eat that. People are like, why are people making J.D. Vance in Germany out to be scary? Like, Germany is a close ally of ours, and the vice president being in Germany is ostensibly just governance. So we should wait and see why he's in Germany. And we should remind ourselves that Germany is one of our closest allies. that they ever forgave us for Snowden, but it's so funny because I think the American people generally think Snowden is a hero. Everyone that knows what he actually affected is never going to get over it. You did see that the Pope sent out bad stuff about Vance. I love this Pope. He's so good. I speak a very horrible, awful, tiny amount of German. I wish I spoke more. Vance Kent. Oh, I don't speak that much German. He ruins guy-liner. I don't think I've ever heard guy-liner before. But somebody was like, your book is definitely better than J.D. Vance, but he's for sure trying to beat you on eyeliner. I don't wear much eyeliner anymore. I did not go to Russia in the Children of God, but my mother's first husband, who she was married off to when she was 16, when he was 18, who I thought was my father for, 12 years of my life, was sent to Russia just after the Iron Curtain had fallen. This is eyeliner tattooed. Nah. Men can't deal with pain like that. Come on. I mean, I can't talk about Snowden much. What I can say is, like, there's a way to be a whistleblower. There's a way to walk onto the floor of Congress and whistleblow classified things. And those of us that were in the war that was affected by it, and in the intelligence community that was affected by it, and in the international community, like, wish she had done that. Like, what was happening wasn't right, but many, many more Americans are unalive because of what he did. So that's what secrets are for. Things like, yeah, we shouldn't have been spying on our allies, but them knowing about it helps no Americans. And, like, yes, I get the absolute outrage, but it's also a little rich in a society that has absolutely given away every shred of privacy for smartphones. But it's hard to explain secrets. See, like, what did Snowden really do? I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that many, many, many more Americans are unalive because of what he did. Because part of what secrets are secret is what is secret. Because if you know what you're looking for, that's one step there already. And listening secrets are the secretest of secrets, along with things like drones. That's why when and things like psyops, I'm like, when people are talking to you about drones, when people are talking to you about psychological operations, and when people are talking to you about eyes and ears of America, like, no. They would be disappeared tomorrow. People get mad at me for not talking about the Middle East is because I don't want to be disappeared tomorrow. But yeah, and, like, look, weaponization of secrets is a problem, but that's how it works. Just like all the Americans are like, down with the US military, like, it's been evil. Yes. And also many, many, many of us would unalive if that happened. So, like, it's great to say some of these things, but yeah, and you run to enemies. I'm like, you don't run to enemies. You run to freaking Brazil. So when that happened, I was I'm just giving you all a view there. When that happened, I was the senior intelligence officer of the battalion. So I walk into some brief I'm giving that morning, and I'm like, y'all, if you're going to sell secrets to the Russians, wait till you're on a beach in Brazil. Executive officer jumps up. He's like, that's not real advice. That's not real. That's not official advice. In the background laughing. Okay, sir. I didn't think they were going to do that. But yeah, again, like, oh, you care about Americans, so you ran to our enemies. Like, okay, sure. Americans love a government's the bad guy story, so it went the way it went. And it was so interesting because I was watching, right? Like I was inside of it, deeply connected to it, in between deployments to war that were deeply affected by it. And then yet I was hearing like the things that the generals were able to say on the news. And I was like, I get it. I would be furious. And that's the job. That's the job of anyone with a secret clearance, is to just go to your grave letting people think that you are a piece of shit to protect the secrets. Like, that's your job. So it's just very interesting that like that case was so interesting because everyone that had the inside knowledge feels pretty much a certain kind of way, and the rest of America feels very different. And ostensibly, if y'all had the knowledge, you would feel pretty much the same kind of way as we do. But we can't tell you. So these are the reasons why, if you've ever worked for the Department of Defense and you write anything at all about the military, even fiction, but not a cooking book, you have to send it to the Pentagon for them to review and make sure you're not passing along secrets. If you're wondering if Knitting Cult Lady is one day going to write feminist military erotica just for the purpose of forcing the Pentagon to have to read it, you know me too well. My publisher is pretty nervous, even though this is a process, just because the book is critical of the military. But I was like, I'm a foreman to like, they're not allowed. The government is not allowed to classify things just because of embarrassment to the government. Obviously, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but they're not allowed to. And so like, I don't need their permission to publish my book. I just need them to clear it. And if they say no, you can still make a decision. What's his name? Owens, who wrote No Easy Day. Mark Owens. They were like, no, you can't. There's too much in this. It's classified. You can't publish it. And he was like, published it anyway. And then you know what happens? Because you have held a secret clearance, the military, the Pentagon just opens a trust and takes all of your royalties. And that's what happened to Mark Owens. And I was also the intelligence officer of a battalion when that happened. And my job was to tell everyone that we can't tell you not to read No Easy Day, but you are not allowed to read it and speculate about what in it is secret. So, yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, it will be good feminist military erotica. I'm going to have fun sending Culting of America to them, but I'm just going to email it to them and then roll on. I'm not going to, I think, wait. It was like the thing I explained to my publisher is like, I was like, if I was still in the military, I might be one of the people having these jobs to like sit there and review secrets. So like, I just spilled military culture secrets, not secrets. They asked me to change 3 words, which is the name of this unit, and instead to just call it the Force. There's another woman who's written a military wives book about a similar unit, and she just had to call it the unit. To which I said, we could push back on that, right? Because it has a Wikipedia page. To which the head of Macmillan legal team said to me, Daniela, we don't play chicken with the Pentagon. I keep saying I'm going to put that on a t-shirt one day. Yes, there's out of books. I've only been getting like 50 to 100 at a time. I think I just got 300, so I'm settling up most of them. You will all be settled by next week. I'm keeping them off, except something happened and I pulled a bunch today. So. Yes, I'm so sorry. It was literally like I was expecting to get books like 2 Mondays ago, 500 books, and instead on the Friday before that, I got an email saying it was going to be 3 weeks delayed. And there's not like a function where I can just message everybody. So I have been responding to the onesies and twosies, and some people have canceled, but we're definitely getting through them. The sticky tape's annoying. Somebody told me I need to get like a double-sided tape thing here to stick it to, and I need to do that. They're not even sticky. They're just so flimsy. The other ones have wax paper, but these are much. No, I've never heard of guy liner. I mean, it's cool. I keep adding all the terms that I hear of, because they're often great for getting around the censors and stuff too. Like Mr. Knitting Quilt Lady tells people to go eat a satchel of refrigerants. Because I think this is a military thing, but to just say to people, just go eat a bag of. And we can't say that on here, so we don't. Did I run out of envelopes? I ran out of books. I need to save 2 for that one. I'm sort of trying to keep it in order, but at some point, 700 orders got jumbled together. Yeah, I mean, it's like saying half a day. Like, people have to think a minute and then realize that they've been insulted, and then it's just like it's hard to come back from that. So, thank you. I'll probably wear this outfit from my cult situation report. Then I have to finish the musical pitch. In between that, I, of course, have to pick up Knitting Cult Baby because these kids get out of school ridiculously early. You're not the president. That was great. Elon Musk's kid told President Trump to shut his mouth and that he wasn't the president, which is definitely something he's heard Elon say, which in my opinion, this is the second strike against Elon, and cult leaders do not forget this, right? So like the day of his victory, the day he was inaugurated into what he thinks is his empire, the news was all about Elon's salute. He's not going to forgive that. Even if it takes years, he's going to use it to clobber him with it eventually. My book is about growing up in a religious cult called the Children of God, and then going into the cult of the United States Army. And then while I was watching the cult leader run America the first time, I wrote something. And I said this at the beginning, but most of you are probably new because now I found out the perfect, like, actual argument, right? Because every time you talk about cults, right, like, people will be like, you're in a cult. Like, no, the other side is a cult. And they say that with what's going on right now, right? And they're like, well, the Democrats are culty too. And I'm like, look, by definition, a two-party system, black and white, you're defining yourself by being against the other, right? Like, by definition, that is culty. But money don't lie, and I wasn't selling 50 to 200 books a day while the Democrats were in office. And so I know that both sides are not equally as culty. That's for sure. No, the shiny stuff makes me happy. Okay, have I told you all about glimmers? So I think this is very important, especially as we go into dark times. And so glimmers are the opposite of triggers. Right? Triggers are things that bring you to dark places, and glimmers just like bring you joy. And I feel like the pieces that I collect for myself, the things that I make, just yarn in general, like I think it's glimmers. And I also have found that like most people have a quirky fiber arts lady in their life whom they love. And it's also a great way to piss off misogynists. So, oh, how many books do I have? Yikes. I would say if I had to make a wild guess, I would say 400. And I would say about 200 of them are books I haven't read because I'm in the process of subscribing to this ideology that like your bookshelf should be like your wine collection. Like some favorites you're going to revisit, but mostly stuff you haven't had yet. And when you're ready for a new book, you just like amble over and you're like, what do I want to read today? So, but yeah, I also do a wicked trade in my market. Are you talking about my books or just like how many books I own, by the way? I realize that was probably your question now. So I've written one book. No. I've written 2 books because Culting of America has been written and now we are working on it and making it good. And then we're going to publish it. And the first, to deconstruct patriarchy, like start with Invisible Women. It's a book about how women have just been left out of the data and how many of us that basically affects. Cast by Isabel Wilkerson is white supremacy, but just like put those two together, like read or listen to. Carolyn Criado Paris is a British woman, so she sounds lovely, and Isabel Wilkerson, it sounds lovely as well. I did both of those as audiobooks. Isabel Wilkerson gives the, I think, super amazing analogy of like, for racism, of like living in a house with lead paint, right? Like it's not your fault. Nobody alive today is at fault for racism. Nobody, right? Like it's not your fault. But once you know about it, it's your responsibility to get out of that house. And it's especially your responsibility to get your children out of that house. And that's, like I said, an analogy that I think is really helpful for talking to white people about deconstructing white supremacy. Oh my God, there's so many good books for deconstructing patriarchy. The beauty myth was a really important one for me for deconstructing beauty stuff, but also Fearing the Black Body. I would recommend that one more because she's not an extremist like Naomi Wolf now is. What? Why? I gave you treats. You have your food. Your bowl is not anywhere near it. I cannot help you, sir. All right, friends. 'Tis time for me to go. I think I signed 300 books. I think we did it. Unless I find another box somewhere, but I think we did it. And I appreciate you hanging out with me. And happy Valentine's Day. My husband's in the hospital right now, but I hope I'm going to be having a picnic on the floor with my family because that's what we do for Valentine's Day. And I hope you all have fun, awesome